that?
Welcome to the Willy Bragg Show, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. And looks like it'll be another fun 4 years as of this afternoon. But in the meantime, we're going to have Angel right back on our show. I think this is your second time on the Willy Bragg Show. Yeah.
So second time.
Angel, introduce yourself to anybody who may not be familiar with you. I think everybody knows who you are.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me back on. And my name is Angel Rivera, as you know. Follow me on X. The thing is there. And yeah, I mean, I'm the host of Angel in the Afternoon. Been doing it for a couple of years now. I have 90 episodes under my belt, so I'm almost at 100. Probably get there March or April because I only do an episode once a week. So yeah, I'm YouTube. I'm at the Handsome Cynic, excuse me, and you can subscribe to me there. You can follow me on X. I'm all over the place, and I also excited about this conversation about Puerto Rico. But I think we need to talk about more what's going on there and how the U.S. government has screwed us over. I'm Puerto Rican, that's why I said that. But yeah, I mean, it's very important to have this conversation, and I want to thank you for having me on and to have this conversation.
Yes, and it's also a very important issue to me too, because my mother is Puerto Rican and my dad's American, but my mom's Puerto Rican, and I am very familiar with Puerto Rico and what the island has gone through and how it's been taken advantage of is very offensive to me, and it really needs to be addressed. And this blackout that took place and just how the response of the U.S. government and I mean is piss poor as usual. And I just think it needs to be addressed once again. And my parents complain about how neglected things are in Puerto Rico, how the U.S. government and just kind of just take the people for granted.
Yeah. I mean, the U.S. government just uses Puerto Rico as their guinea pig for their economic agenda and their ideas for us here in the mainland. Like their privatization obsession over there. I mean, before the Promesa Act was passed back in 2016. It's one of Obama's last bills he signed for leaving office. It basically created a corporate board for Puerto Rico. So you know how corporate boards, Wall Street have board of directors. It's kind of like it is here in Puerto Rico, and they have final say over every policy Puerto Rico passes in San Juan. Let's say if they pass a economic bill, to help Puerto Ricans, this board can very easily say, no, we're not going to do that. Instead, you're going to privatize more schools. You're going to privatize the electric grid further. You're going to privatize everything, and there's nothing you can do about it. So, yeah, and they just don't care. They just want to use Puerto Rico as a guinea pig for their economic agenda here in the U.S. Whatever works, great. If it doesn't work, well, Puerto Ricans are screwed anyways. Doesn't matter. So that's their thought process.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And privatization proven time and time again. It doesn't work. So I have a video here, a real quick video that I will share with you and everybody that kind of addresses that. And this is prior to the blackout, but it is still relevant to what we are talking about here. So. Let's see. Yeah, right here it is. I'll share it with everyone. Very short one from Breakthrough News. Yeah, here we go.
Is under attack. What do we do?
Puerto Ricans are facing a power grid nightmare, and U.S. corporate greed is to blame.
True, people are leaving the island because they can't pay for electricity.
Puerto Rican activists gathered outside a federal court in New York City to protest Golden Tree, the Wall Street vulture fund that's trying to profit off of Puerto Rico's energy crisis. Puerto Rico was already suffering from an outdated electrical grid when it was battered by Hurricane Maria in 2017. When the Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority went bankrupt, Golden Tree moved in and bought up its cheap bonds. Now, Golden Tree is taking the Power Authority to court to force them to raise electricity costs and use that money for a payout to the bondholders of $8.5 billion. But activists say that's the last place Puerto Ricans' money should be going.
The bondholders want is to have that money just for repayment instead of investing it in the grid, which is what it actually needs. If it's not invested in repairs, people are just going to have to leave the island.
The other company that stands to make millions off of Puerto Rico's crisis is Luma Energy. Luma is the private U.S.-Canadian company that now manages the island's electrical grid. Back on the island, Puerto Ricans hit the streets in outrage at Luma Energy after another massive blackout left 340,000 people without power during a heat wave last month.
Luma es una mafia avalada por el gobierno y avalada por el Congreso de Estados Unidos.
In 2021, Luma took over parts of Puerto Rico's once publicly owned grid in a 15-year deal for $1.5 billion that was sealed behind closed doors. Puerto Ricans were promised a privatized grid would improve service.
Ese proyecto y ese modelo de privatización con Luma fracasó. O sea, todo lo que le vendieron al pueblo, eso fracasó. Todo lo que dice Pierluisi es para las gradas, porque Pierluisi fue el que le vendió al pueblo que eso era una empresa de calibre mundial, que no iba a haber aumentos en el costo de la luz, que dieron tiempo lo que esto ha sido totalmente un desastre.
Under Luma's watch, blackouts are only more frequent and prolonged, and electricity costs are higher than ever. After several Luma price hikes, Puerto Ricans now pay an electricity rate 40% higher than what those in the US pay, which means they're spending 8% of their incomes on electric bills, compared to 2.4% for Americans.
No le importa y le siguen faltando el respeto al pueblo, por eso es que estamos aquí. Y esperamos que esto sea el comienzo de muchas manifestaciones, porque, les repito, el país, para que tenga paz y tranquilidad y estabilidad en el sistema eléctrico, hay que anular ese contrato y traer a las trabajadoras y trabajadores que fuimos desplazados.
Narvaez is referring to the hundreds of skilled electrical linemen with the Union of Electricity Workers who were forced out and replaced by workers from Luma's parent company. But a shortage of expertise only partially explains Luma's incompetence.
Contrario a lo que alguna gente está diciendo por ahí, no se van de Puerto Rico voluntariamente. Aún hay gente que
La Junta, that's the U.S.-appointed board which has controlled all of Puerto Rico's fiscal policy since 2016 when Obama signed the Promesa Act. They are totally unelected by Puerto Ricans. By selling off Puerto Rico's public assets to private companies, the U.S. government is ensuring the island is more favorable for its corporate profits while making it unlivable for Puerto Ricans. There are now more Puerto Ricans in the diaspora than on the island itself, and they say they're being forced out by these austerity policies.
Forced displacement is a weapon of colonialism. They are making conditions in Puerto Rico impossible for people to survive for people to make a living, for people to access food, water, their basic needs. So Puerto Ricans believe that they'll find it here in the United States of America. And when they come here, they realize that the situation is just as dire here for Puerto Ricans and for all people that live in the United States of America. They want us out of Puerto Rico so that they can take over and make it into their, their own paradise, their tax haven.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, we got, like I said before with La Junta or the board of directors. I mean, they control the island basically. And on top of that, the when I was last in Puerto Rico in 2017, like 6 months before Hurricane Maria, and we had a blackout then. I mean, there was an entire day that was no electricity for like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And they called it a necessary blackout, a rolling blackout, because the electrical grid couldn't take how much energy it was using. So certain parts of the island had to be blacked out for a day. This is before Hurricane Maria. This is before La Junta took over. Or actually, no, it's right after. This is right after, because Trump took office in 2017 and Obama passes in 2016. So yeah, we had a rolling blackout then. This is before Hurricane Maria, and after Hurricane Maria, remember Trump going to the island and having that infamous moment with the I think it was not toilet paper towels.
Towels.
Yeah, and it's irrelevant. That's the infamous moment he had, and yeah, now the privatized electrical grid promises were made. Oh, it'll be cheaper, or it'll be less blackouts, or you don't have to worry anymore about the private company will maintain the electrical grid. We don't have to worry about paying for it anymore. None of that happened. The promises were not kept. In fact, the blackouts are getting worse now, and especially after the blackout on New Year's Day. Oh my God! I mean, I talked about this on my show. Nearly 80%, 90% of the island was completely blacked out for more than a day. So yeah, it's just. The island's just being screwed over. And on top of that, we have, the last governor passed, zero taxes for Americans that moved to the island. So the last governor was like, oh yeah, if you move to America, you're an American, you move to Puerto Rico, zero taxes. Like that's why a lot of the wealthy are just running to Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Now my parents, as I said, now they're visiting here right now, but my parents, their residence in Puerto Rico. So my dad moved there in 1995 when they retired, and yes, I said they both love it down there. They love the weather. They love a lot of. They're happy in a lot of ways down there, but the problem is, the water shutting off on occasion and going on like a day or two without electricity and things of that nature. And they live in a nice home. They live in everything, and all of that. I mean, and they still have to suffer what is sometimes occasionally third world conditions in an island that should not be really, honestly, Puerto Rico should not be suffering under such conditions. They should be getting. They have to abide by a lot of the rules of any U.S. state. They should be getting the proper amount of aid that these states get and everything. And with the $80 billion that they were in debt, as a result of Hurricane. It wasn't a result of Hurricane Maria, but they could have canceled that debt. Trump, he could have canceled that debt. They would have, that would have been a kind gesture on his part. He didn't do it, just like a fuck, and it's really disrespectful to do this to any society, but it's it feels I feel disrespected myself over this.
Yeah, dude, Trump doesn't give a shit about Puerto Rico. I mean, that $80 billion is mostly owned by Wall Street. They own all that debt, and there's no way they're going to give it up just to be nice to Puerto Rico after the hurricane. So most of that debt is privately owned by Wall Street, the vulture capitalists, and they're not going to give it up. In fact, that's why the Promesa Act was passed, in order to have that corporate, that corporate control over Puerto Rico, that at least control from Washington. And now Donald Trump's president again. He'll appoint a new board, or he'll appoint somebody to that board, and that'll continue. That's not going to change. People think that Trump is going to care more about Puerto Rico. Of course not. He barely cares about the United States. I mean, he's in it more for himself, obviously, and to enrich himself. So yeah, I mean, and Luma, the private electricity company, I mean, they have not maintained that grid at all. It's obvious. There's a random blackout for no reason. There was no hurricane. There was no horrible storm. It's just goodbye. Apparently they were blaming, they were blaming the company that handles the I forget. I covered it on my show. I should have probably refreshed my memory, but yeah, I mean, they were blaming I think it's a generator company or something, and the generator company was blaming Luma. So they're basically doing this for why the electrical grid went out for Puerto Rico. So no, it's not our fault. It's their fault. Like, oh no, it's Luma's fault. So yeah, we don't. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're fine.
But my theory went off for no reason. But yeah, I mean, it's like, it's just too much. I mean, how much does Puerto Rico have to take before they say screw this?
Yeah. I mean, just and I don't know. It's just a sad and so much. And whatever Puerto Rico wants, it seems like I don't die on any hill about Puerto Rico's statehood, but it's like they voted for statehood and there was no response. And I don't know if I want Puerto Rico's statehood. I don't know if I want the current status of a Commonwealth or full independence. I'm just kind of on the fence about all this in terms of what it could mean economically in any direction. I know that if Puerto Rico becomes a state, it may mean more federal money for them, but it may mean more taxes for the people too. But they will have some kind of representation that they don't have right now in Washington. So I don't know. As I said, and if they're fully independent, I think they'll probably be probably more neglected economically. So I just don't have the answers there. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a catch-22 because no matter what, Puerto Rico is not going to be, in the best position either way. They cannot stay with it as a Commonwealth. That's not working. That's failing miserably. That's not an option. Statehood. Let me go to independence first. Independence, that's not going to work either, I don't think, because yes, they'll be independent from the U.S., but ultimately they're not going to be able to handle. They don't have a currency. They don't have a bank. They don't have like a national bank or anything like that. They don't. So what they're going to have to do is take loans from either the World Bank or IMF in order to sustain their government. And there's going to be conditions for that loans. Most likely, that includes more privatization and more closing of public schools and stuff like that. So that's not real. I don't think that's an option either. The best option is not a good option either, but the best option is statehood, because that would force the United States to take on the $80 billion in debt, because that's what happened after the Revolutionary War. They took on all the debts of the states during that war. So they would have to take on that $80 billion in debt, and maybe that means more federal income. That means federal income tax, but ultimately, as you said, they would get a congressperson, because probably one congressperson, because Puerto Rico has a big population, and they'll get 2 senators, whatever that's worth, because at least they'll have some sort of representation. Because right now, they do have a representative at large. I forget who it is right now, but they do have a representative at large, which is in Congress and can discuss bills, and they can be on committees, but they can't actually vote on legislation. They can't introduce or vote on legislation. So it's kind of like we're representative, but at the same time, they don't have any real power, because the U.S. isn't a state, or Puerto Rico isn't a state. So it's not the best. It's not a good option, but the best option is statehood because ultimately, Puerto Rico will be able to have more rights in Washington, whatever that's worth, and they have an actual representative and 2 senators, and they'll take on most of that, almost all of that debt the U.S. government had to take on. So, but excuse me, that's why they won't allow statehood because the vulture capitalists want to collect that $80 billion one way or another. So, if they have to drain the island of every cent that is worth, they'll do that and more in order to collect that cash.
Also, I think partisan wise, I think that most Republicans are going to view Puerto Rico as possibly voting for the Democrats, and I think that that's also an issue. They don't want 2 more Democratic senators in the U.S. Senate. And I mean, it's projection. That's not a given that is going to be a Democrat in the House and 2 Democratic senators, but that's what they think. So I think that's part of it right there for kind of disregarding, which that's kind of selfish on their part, but it is it sounds like it might be the least bad option, but I don't like the sound of it because it sounds almost too colonial. It's more colonial. It's more colonial. Just one more aspect of colonialism that does not need to take place. So, they're in a catch-22, like you said.
Yep. And on top of that, here's the situation. I mean, yes, we need the. I don't know necessarily if Puerto Rico would vote for Democrats. I mean, it depends because Puerto Rico is a lot more socially conservative, especially you're born and raised on the island, than compared to if you're a Puerto Rican here in the U.S. So it depends on the election. It depends. Like right now in 2024, I think that Puerto Ricans would have voted for Republicans based on the momentum that Trump had, but in another election cycle, they may go Democratic. It may be a swing state. That's what I'm thinking it would be. It wouldn't be solidly blue or solidly red. Depends on the election cycle, depends on the issues, it depends of a lot of factors. Like it would be like a Michigan or Georgia or a state like that, or what state am I thinking? Pennsylvania, that's the state I'm thinking of. There's a lot of Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania now, so it would be kind of like a swing state, my suspicion. And they maybe have a Republican like one Republican, one Democrat, and maybe a Democrat in the House. It just depends, on the election. I don't necessarily think of it as a blue state, and Republicans thinking it'll be a solidly blue state. I don't know why, because it's like. They're pretty. It's just I think an ignorance of the culture on the island. Because if they know the truth that not necessarily, it could be a swing state. Republicans have a shot, especially when it comes down to social issues, which we all know Republicans love to campaign on social issues. It did this time around with Trump and the trans issue and all the social issues they love to campaign on. So yeah, it's. It would probably be a swing state. That's my thought on that.
And just and I don't think that the Puerto Rican Independence Party, who did their best in the 1972 election in Puerto Rico, I don't see them gaining traction anytime soon. So, are you familiar with them?
Who? I'm sorry.
The Puerto Rican Independence Party.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Yes. Well, the leader, Ruben Barrios. I cannot think of his name. I cannot think of his name.
I think that's it. Yeah, I don't remember 100%, but
they did make a little bit of a comeback in terms of getting known during the protests in 2000 over the situation in Vieques. I remember that, and so
here's the thing about the Independence Party. They're getting momentum because in the last election they had another meaningless resolution vote on statehood, which statehood won again. But for the first time ever, independence won 30% of the vote, which it was like 20 points behind the statehood vote. So I was like, wow, 30%. people in Puerto Rico is sick and tired of the Commonwealth system because it's not working for them, and voting for statehood is pointless because Washington doesn't take it up, one reason or another. So yeah, I mean, there's an independence movement in Puerto Rico, and I don't see that working either. Like I said just a few minutes ago, they'll probably have to take loans from the IMF or World Bank, and that's going to come with conditions in order to back their own currency with something. Would have to be the U.S. dollar, and they would still probably owe that $80 billion to Wall Street. So
Yeah.
it's not the ideal situation. I understand the independence movement because they're frustrated with this system, with the Commonwealth system, and it's not working, obviously. So where else we wouldn't be discussing this? So yeah, the best option is statehood, but Washington's not taking it up. So I understand the frustration and going towards independence, but even if independents win that vote one day, the U.S. doesn't have to take it up. It's like, no, I mean, either you force us to make you independent, or you have to take the Commonwealth system as it is. So again, we're stuck in a catch-22, and it sucks.
Yeah, and it seems like the only realistic option is to try to hope that the current status of Commonwealth can improve one day, but it's like, it's kind of miserable waiting for that to happen too,
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult because unless right now Trump is president again. He just got inaugurated, and there's going to be another. Trump is going to not do anything about Puerto Rico, but not just Puerto Rico, but Marco Rubio is now Secretary of State. Good luck. I mean, he's going to go to war with Latin America, especially the socialist states.
Yeah, one of the few good things Biden did, and it was way too late, was the ease the travel restriction to Cuba,
Yeah.
and damn well Trump is going to go and put a stop to that.
Mm-hmm. And he signed like 100 executive orders today in that arena that he did a speech in, and I wouldn't be surprised if one of them was restricting travel to Cuba again, because there are so many. Like he signed like over 100 as soon as he went to that arena. Excuse me, and yeah, it's we all know that Trump isn't going to do anything about Puerto Rico, and he's just going to appoint more board members so that that junta. And it's not much that's going to change. And, it's frustrating, but at the same time, it's important to shine a light on it because there's also a lot of political corruption on the island, too. I mean, mayors are like really powerful on the island. I mean, I saw a report about how corrupt some mayors are, and they're making themselves millionaires. It's based on a little bit of government money they get. They're just keeping it for themselves. I mean, it's just blatant corruption. And with Americans moving down there, rich Americans, not getting any better. In fact, the new governor of Puerto Rico is a woman. I forget her name, and she was representative at large in Washington for years. So she was right in the middle of that corrupt Washington. So there's no hope for her to actually do anything. No. And hell, she's not even really in charge anyway. It's the board that that the president appoints. So she can do whatever she wants. Ultimately, you might as well back before, I think, what was it, 1960 something? The governor of Puerto Rico was appointed by the president. So it's just all, and might as well do that again because the governor has no power.
I know in 1952 it went from an actual American colony to the Commonwealth status that it currently is. I didn't know about the appointment of the governor. That was until the 60s.
Yeah, because that's when it became a Commonwealth, and the United States gave Puerto Rico some freedom. Like, oh yeah, now you can vote for your own governor and your own government.
Okay.
But ultimately, that's meaningless. But it was a gesture, by the U.S. government. And then the revolutionaries in because they tried for independence, and when they first was taken over by the U.S., they tried independence, and the United States government beat that down in a way that it'd be tough to get into right now. But they had the FBI was down there, and they spied in on everyone. Everyone was spied in on, especially if you were pro-independence. And not only you were spied in on, but your family was spied on, and your friends were spied on. And intimidation. They intimidated family members. It's like, oh yeah, don't associate with so and so because he wants independence, and it was just I forget they had files on everyone on the island, especially if you were pro independence in your family. I mean, they beat down independence to the point where Puerto Ricans won't even mention it until today. There's kind of a movement again, but this time it's to the ballot box. But yeah, I mean, it was just horrible the way they were treated, and the way they treated that island, and the way they treated the people, and they scared everyone to death. And even if you move to the U.S., the FBI still spied in on you. So there was a major spying operation against Puerto Ricans, just like it's doing now to us. We're all being spied on right now. Our internet, they have files on all of us, especially dissidents. Like who are anti-Zionist or pro Puerto Rican independence, like us. People like us. I'm sure we may not think we're important, but ultimately they're spying on everybody for a reason, because the United States government is afraid of revolutionary thought. So yeah, I mean, they have files on all of us. So I wouldn't be surprised one day if I see a file of me. So
yeah, they're keeping track of all of us. Obviously, I know that there's like in Utah, there's like a facility, a huge facility where apparently every phone conversation, every keystroke on the internet, every text, every imaginable form of communication you can imagine is stored. So to the point where it's almost our very thoughts are actually stored away in this facility. So so we're all being surveillance and spied upon and all of that. And one hand, I'm not too worried about myself per se. I'm not the most radical person in the world on one hand, but on the other hand, maybe the U.S. government will look at me in another way. I don't know. But
it's important. I think they're called fusion centers. The Department of Homeland Security has these fusion centers around the country, at least 7. So basically, a lot of people think this is conspiracy theory, but there's like the United States has the Department of Homeland Security set up the U.S. like in 7 quadrants. Like the Northeast is quadrant 1, the South is quadrant 2. Like there's 7 quadrants, and each quadrant there's a fusion center. So they spy in on all of us there. I think we have one in New Jersey, in Newark, or is it Newark or somewhere up in North Jersey? There's a fusion center there too, which, as you said, they're just basically spying in on all of us, and they have files on all of us, just in case the president ever declares martial law for whatever reason. They can split off the country into 7 quadrants, which are controlled by one person, which is appointed by the president, whoever it is. So. Yeah, again, a lot of people may think this is conspiracy, but no, the files are actually out there. It's public record. So they have these plans just in case, the country, falls apart, or there's mass protest or general strike. I mean, we've had on the left discussions about general strike for years. If that happens, the president has options to, massively screw us over and basically put us all in prison, or in camps. This is not made up stuff here. This is real. This is.
And I know I've been talking a lot lately about a general strike too, and all, because I think that's going to be about the only way we're gonna, if there's any ghost of a chance of seeing some kind of justice, that's probably going to be the only way. And and people kind of getting together and putting aside some of their major differences, and we just, easier to said than done, but getting back to Puerto Rico, now, getting back to Puerto Rico, my parents, are you familiar with a town called Ceiba?
Yeah, I think so. I've heard of it.
It's between Humacao and Fajardo. Anyway, that's where they live, and Roosevelt Roads is in that area, what used to be the naval base, and
okay.
And that's been closed down, I think, since 2006, something like that. Close to 20 years that thing's been closed down, Roosevelt Roads. Anyway, I mean, and now it's just absolutely desolate, that whole area. Another way that they screwed over the people in Puerto Rico, they could have given that area to Fajardo, could have given it to Saba, could have given it to Humacao, and found a way to kind of help, open commerce, use the airport, the control tower that used to fly these bombers. I remember I used to hear when I visit my grandparents during the summer at the house that my mom and dad lives at now. And I mean, these planes would be roaring from the sky all the time. I mean, just nonstop. There were times it was like 10 hours a day, just roaring around all over the place. But getting back to what I was saying, this air traffic control tower and everything, they could just convert that into a civilian airport and have, and bring commerce into this area of the island, bring jobs and this sort of thing. But no, I mean, it hasn't. And as I said, what little bit of a thriving economy it had, it dried up when they closed down the base.
The U.S. military was the economy, probably, because the soldiers would go out and they would go to bars and they would drink and they would buy stuff. And as soon as the military shut that base down, it was done, because ultimately they're not going to give up. That land's been abandoned, as you said, and it's not going to be used anytime soon. And the U.S. could have just said, okay, use it, as you said, but nope. It's like, oh yeah, it's just sitting there, rotting away, abandoned. And on top of that, go ahead.
I'm sorry. There's like movie theaters rotting away, shopping malls. I mean, literally. I mean, I saw a video about it. I mean, it looks worse than what you imagine a ghost town to look like. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah. And I mean, it's the entire area is a ghost town because the U.S. military was the economy. It's like, okay, well, these soldiers are going to need bars, going to be movie theaters, restaurants. As soon as that shut down, that's all gone, and there was no industry there and nothing. So yeah. Anyways, and I think I'm not sure if it was that base or another base they had, but the U.S. military would just do bombings. Like they would test their bombs in a part of Puerto Rico, and the next day it's Vieques. That's what it was.
It was an extension of Roosevelt Road. That's why it's partly why Roosevelt Road got closed down.
Yeah, they would have to clean up. The U.S. military had to clean up the area first before they can, use it for commerce or people to live at. But they're not going to do that because it costs so much money, and it's like, oh, it's just Puerto Rican, so who cares? Just let it rot away with the bombings and stuff and the air quality not being good because people are sick. I mean, those people in that area are really sick in Vieques. So because of they tested their bombs there. The ones that they're using today in the Middle East were tested in Puerto Rico first just to see whether it worked or not. And now they're just giving it to Israel and they're giving it all over, the Middle East to use in bombs, Ukraine, So, yeah, I mean, I digress where I'm getting into the Middle East, but yeah, they used it in Puerto Rico first.
Yeah. So, it's just terrible what's going on and everything, and all that. And as I said, there used to be several bases there. There used to be Fort Buchanan and San Juan, Roosevelt Road that covered from Fajardo all the way down to Humacao. And then there was a place that was near Ponce and Salinas called Fort Allen. I don't know if you ever heard of that particular base.
Yeah, there's bases all up and down the island. They were, at least. This like once the U.S. gained control of land, they'll never give it up. Like, for example, in Japan, I mean, I'm sorry to go there, but real quick, there's Okinawa. We controlled that island for decades after World War II until recently when we finally gave it back to the Japanese. But yeah, that base is still there, so it's like we might as well, still control it. But in a virtue signal, oh yeah, now the Japanese can control their island again. They have their own gut, kind of. So yeah, I mean, once the U.S. gains land, they'll never give it up. That's why there's either military bases there or something. And then real quick, we have Trump, talking about taking Greenland and taking the Panama Canal back, and it's like, okay, but. Yeah. I mean, it's, like, oh, yeah, let's take Greenland. Do what? I mean, it must be minerals there, natural resources. The only reason why the U.S. would be interested in Greenland. But again, in Panama, again, they're interested in those shipping routes because they can take a cut of that money. So, and they were mad at Jimmy Carter for giving up the Panama Canal, So, yeah, but yeah, and so yeah, I digress. But it's just the U.S. is just using Puerto Rico as a testing ground for their bombs and testing ground for their economic policies for us here in the mainland. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, by the way,
Mhm.
Warren wants to know about New Jersey orbs.
The orbs.
Yeah.
I know about the drones that were mysteriously appearing, but I don't know anything about the orbs. Is this something I must have missed? This. I mean,
Yeah.
there's orbs around here. I mean, I haven't seen any. So
Yeah.
yeah, I knew about the drones. Mysterious drones that pop up out of nowhere, and I covered it on my show too. A lot of it just looked like either airplanes or they're just lights. We didn't see any drones. Because we covered it on my show with a bunch of video and stuff, and people were like, "Oh yeah, look at that. There's a drone there." I was like, "That looks like a plane." But I digress. Yeah, I don't know anything about the orbs, and there's something I must have missed though.
Yeah, but yeah, as I said, and I haven't been in Puerto Rico in 20 years. So actually, the last time I was in Puerto Rico, I was a couple of days in Vieques. I have family in Vieques. One of my mom's cousins lived in Vieques, so we were visiting. We went to visit her, so at her house.
My family's in Santa Isabel, which is a small town on the southern coast. I mean, we're right next to the ocean, pretty much. And my family owns property there for 100 years. My grandfather lived there. My grandparents lived there. My father and mother lived there. And now my aunt and uncle lives there today. And they basically manage the property. And yeah, I mean, the island or that city in particular is being eaten up by the ocean. So my mother went to school. There was a school there which was eaten up by the ocean because slowly but surely with the rising sea levels, so it's eating away at that part of the island. And it ate away enough to the point where the Puerto Rican government had to buy a part of our land in order to build a new road on it because it was just being eaten up by the water, so the ocean. So yeah, and
Is that
it's
part of
just
the major highway system there now? The road that's
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Autopista?
they had to buy a piece of our land because because in order to build a new road to get to the highway, because of the not the highway, but to the main land of the city, and yeah, I mean, yeah, no, that's a highway. No, you're right. I was right the first time. There's a highway there. Yeah, I remember because the last time I went, we drove past the highway and our land is right there. But yeah, we don't.
Highway 3 used to go right around the island. I remember that.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's like 3 generations of my family lived there, and I visited, and there's a nice lake there. There's a nice land. It's just that I mean, it's being eaten up, and eventually to get to a point where the land is not going to mean anything because the ocean's still rising, and it's slowly jumping into the island. So yeah, I mean, it's a small town, and before Maria, there was a nice boardwalk being built there in the ocean, and Maria destroyed it, and it hasn't been rebuilt because there's no money to rebuild it. So, and there's not going to be any money to rebuild it. It was really nice though. I visited right before, I was there 6 months before Maria hit, and they was showing it to me. It's like, oh, it's going to open in September. It's like, oh wow, that's nice. Around that time, the hurricane hit, and those plans were scrapped, obviously, because it doesn't exist. the boardwalk.
My parents were visiting in 2017 just before Hurricane Maria happened. This is before my grandmother, several months before my grandmother here died. And so when they were ready to go back, Hurricane Maria kind of did its thing, and they were here for several months. They couldn't go back because of Hurricane Maria, and and oh boy, when they finally did make it back, it was tremendous. Well, the house wasn't damaged, but there was a lot of damages to the yard. There's a lot of damages to there was a fence that they wanted to get rid of that was going to be a lot of trouble. Well, There was no more. There was no more trouble. There was no more fence or anything out there. So that part they were kind of happy about. The only thing
Yeah.
that they were happy about, but it was a bitch to get everything kind of back to normal. And they're not exactly, very young anymore. I mean, they were still in their 70s at that time. But
yeah. My family built they had old like wooden homes there, and eventually it was built into like concrete. So all the homes there are now concrete pretty much, the ones at least that are being lived in. And the hurricanes don't really affect the houses much. It's just that they affect the surrounding land. So a lot of cleanup to do once the hurricane hits, but the houses themselves are in pretty good shape because they're concrete. So it's concrete foundation and concrete on top. So they don't really move no matter how powerful the hurricanes are. There are some houses there that are on the property that are abandoned, like wooden houses from when family members passed away. They just left them there because they had no money to actually demolish them. So they're just there being abandoned and rotting away. But yeah, eventually my uncle was like, hopefully the hurricanes take them because, we don't have to actually take them apart. It's like, yeah, we'll see about that. I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting solution to that problem. But yeah, I mean, my uncle's in his 80s and my aunt in her late 70s, I think. And yeah, they have a house up here in New Jersey in Camden. So they spend half the year there and half the year in Camden because my uncle can't live in cold anymore because he has massive health problems, his allergies whenever he comes up here and it's cold. So, but he's stubborn, so he comes up here, and every time he's up in the hospital, I'm like, "What are you doing here? Go stay home. I mean, come back in the summer." It's like, but I digress, But yeah, the land is nice. It's a nice little land, and if it's still around by the time I'm ready to retire, if I have money, I might just stay there. But if I don't, then obviously I can't. But yeah, I mean, it depends of how my financials are in 20 years. But
yeah, the house that my parents lived in is an inheritance from my grandparents, and what started off as a modest little concrete 4-room house turned into this splendid over the decades between my grandparents improving it and the final touches to my parents when they inherited it, it became this massive 5-bedroom. I mean, it almost looks like a damn. I mean, it looks almost like a palace. I mean, it really isn't. But it's amazing what the work you can do in Puerto Rico compared to what you can do in the United States. You could take a structure with not a lot of money in Puerto Rico and turn it into something, grand compared to here. Here you can't do that. Partly is the building codes and things like that, and you can do more with concrete in Puerto Rico than you can here in the United States too.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking. I was reading like current news in Puerto Rico earlier before we started, and there's a couple of things that I've noticed. Apparently, Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela allegedly threatened to liberate Puerto Rico. So I don't know what that means, whether it would mean military action or God knows what. But yeah, I'm sure it's just bluster. But I found that interesting that he would want to liberate. I understand why he want to liberate Puerto Rico because they're a socialist state, and Puerto Rico obviously needs a lot of help. So, but yeah, that's it. That was interesting. And also, I looked is like. This is 3 days ago, but the U.S. government announced a $1.2 billion to help Puerto Rico finance renewable energies. Again, that most likely be overturned once Trump became president, but this is 3 days ago. So that money's probably not going. Puerto Rico's not going to see that money.
No, well, no, it's not. So anyway, are you have any plans to go back to Puerto Rico soon, or?
Yeah. I mean, well, if money gets better for me, I definitely would go back. I haven't been since 2017, and it's been too long, and they were asking me when I'm coming back. So I don't know when financially things get better for me because right now things are difficult, just like they are for most of us. So but eventually I do want to go back. It's a nice island, and ideally I would go in the winter because I can avoid the cold for a little bit because we got nearly 6 inches of snow here in New Jersey today. So
I'm jealous. We don't get snow around here.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not to that level anyway.
Mhm.
No. But yeah, I haven't been in since 2005. And most of my relatives who are from Puerto Rico lives in the United States. So
Uh-huh.
they live either in Florida or they live up in Connecticut and Massachusetts. So
Okay.
so that's where most, and I have a few in Chicago. So
Okay.
so that's it as far as America is concerned. Very few lives in Puerto Rico. My mom, and she's got some relatives scattered around the island. So that's
Okay.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom has a lot of family down in the island. She's Puerto Rican. Well, both my parents are Puerto Rican, so yeah, there's a lot of family up and down the island. And I mean, they were posting pictures on Facebook during the blackouts, and I was like, oh, I mean, a lot of them are literally in the dark, and I was like, on my show, I recommended if you have a little bit of money, you should probably go and get a generator for your house. That way, if you can afford to install a generator, you'll probably, because these blackouts can go for days, and people, their food can go rotten. So they'll lose all their food, and the U.S. government isn't helping with food stamps or anything like that. So because we had a hurricane up here, forget what it was called in 2011. It was a pretty bad hurricane, and destroyed. We were out with electric here for 4 or 5 days, but at least the U.S. government gave us food stamps to buy all the food back. So, but yeah, that's not happening in Puerto Rico. So, I would recommend a generator, or my grandparents built a like an underground food for the food, to put food there if it gets cold, if we don't have didn't have electricity until like 30, 40 years ago. Before that, there's no electricity on the property, so they had to
Wow.
find ways to store food. And now there's like a thing there you can store food and keep it cool. It's like underground type deal. So it worked, and it still works. But yeah, I mean, that was the way. You can, if you have that, that's fine. But that stuff doesn't exist anymore on the island for obvious reasons. They have electric, but I would recommend a generator. But those are expensive to install, so not a lot of people can afford it. I saw a report in Puerto Rico where it's like there are people like, oh well, we're getting gas for a generator. It's like, oh no, they must have money, because not many Puerto Ricans have money for generators. So
Yeah, my parents have to have water collected. They collect water just in case
yeah.
the water shuts down. I don't think I'm going to have to ask them if they have a generator. I don't know if they have a generator or not.
Okay.
I will ask them when I get a chance. So,
If they don't, they should probably install one if they have the money for it.
I think they probably, knowing them, I think that they're careful people. So I think they would. I
Yeah.
want to ask them.
Mhm.
Do you have do you have any final words? I have to go to work in a little while.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for having me on. I host Angel in the afternoon every Fridays at 7, and I'm also a part of the Indie News Network, or INN. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. People in the chat were saying it. Yeah, I'm on every Fridays at 7, and we have multiple shows on INN. We're streaming nearly every day on the network, so check us out, Indie News Network. And look us up on YouTube, and you'll be able to find their channel. And yeah, I mean, one more thing before we go. I think it's important that like more content creators bring up Puerto Rico and discuss the way the U.S. has been screwing them over, which is why I'm going to make a conscious effort on my show to discuss Puerto Rico more this year. So in 2025, because the Trump administration just took over again, and we all know how they treated Puerto Rico in the first term, and Biden didn't do much better. I mean, I'm not saying the Democrats did much better; they didn't. But yeah, we all know that Trump is going to not help Puerto Rico, but screw it over further. So I think I need to cover it more, and I'm hoping more content creators do too, because I think it's very important for to shine a light on what's going on in the island, and hopefully maybe through our words do something about it one day.
Absolutely, and as I said, yeah, I think that we need to discuss Puerto Rico and anywhere where there's any injustice that's going on right now, and Puerto Rico doesn't get the love it deserves, and I was just like, I think that I was like, you know what, I need to discuss Puerto Rico. I don't think I've ever discussed Puerto Rico on this show, and I was like, I need to discuss Puerto Rico, and I was like, let me talk to Angel. I think that we'll have a great discussion about Puerto Rico. So,
well, I'm glad you reached out and had me on because I think it's important to discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Follow Angel. Angel. When I get a chance, I procrastinate putting everything down on the description box. Several description boxes I got to take care of on my videos here, but I will be sure to put down all the information.
All right, sounds good.
And all of that. And I'm gonna, when I log off in a minute, I'll talk to you privately for a minute before I go to work. So
okay.
All right. So everyone, this is Angel Rivera. Follow him on Twitter and YouTube and all the other platforms I'm planning to list down when I get a chance, perhaps in the morning. And if you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment anyway. If you disagree with what I have to say, we'll have a conversation. Feel free to share the content I have on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you, create your own platform, and utilize it because we're the muckrakers of our time, so muckraker way. Subscribe to the Willy Bragg Show. Pardon Ed, free and pardon Ed Snowden. Free Palestine. Free healthcare for all. Preserve absolute freedom of speech, and fuck Elon Musk. Y'all take care, and I will see y'all next time.